Um, I teach quite a lot online, but today I feel a bit different. I feel much more emotional, both being connected to Giovanni, to the process. We are here to meet to commemorate Giovanni. So I think, there's whatever we will do will not even touch how much he deserved and gave to this community and to the Western world regarding Chinese medicine. And I say, and also today we will launch a book which I co-wrote with Giovanni, and so this is another kind of exciting, special milestone for me, and I hope for many of us. First of all, my utmost thank is to Sebastian, who I know joined us. He's still not appearing, but I know he's here. Sebastian, the son of Giovanni. And I'm deeply thankful for the trust he placed in me, offering this text and inspiring me to pursue this, to publish a book. And on this very important topic about herbal medicine and the treatment of cancer. From the manuscript, it was a journey of 3 years. Books are always long journey, much more than one thing, and also creating a publishing house and ability to publish it in the way we would like to. So it was a process, and now we are at kind of the final launching of it. I will say, first of all, and that's why I mean about thanking Sebastian. Giovanni, as you will later see, he crossed my path in many, many ways. We were very different. Giovanni was a scholar. I'm more coming from the place of being a researcher and a clinician and a teacher. But this meeting around this manuscript was very fruitful, and I think there is the best of both worlds. I would like to start with maybe reading the dedication that I put in the book because it summarized, I think, in 2 paragraphs a lot. And I say this book is dedicated to my teacher friend of one of the great inspiration of Chinese medicine, Giovanni Maciocia. Exceptional was his passion for this medicine, his deep understanding of its roots and origin, and his unique ability to bridge ancient knowledge with current times. For all of those who are practicing this medicine, Giovanni's bodies of work provides a rare treasure. And I would like, on behalf of the whole community of Chinese medicine that I meet in my different heads, so to speak, I would like to deeply thank him for that. And as you will hear probably from the other people who will join and commemorate him. He was not just a teacher, he was a real inspiration. His clarity of mind always struck me. I met Giovanni in many stages, and first of all as a teacher, and he was one of these teachers that when I sat in his class, my mind went clearer and sharper and faster. And this is usually the sign of a giant, of somebody who has a clarity of mind himself and ability to deliver it. And he's probably one of the most influential or the most influential single book writer and teacher of Chinese medicine in the West. I want also to give special thanks, as I say, first of all, to Sebastian, but also to Charlie, who runs Suba and Herbs, to Guy and Patty from TCM Academy, and to some people who helped me with writing the book, to Francisca Eckel, Lucy Dean, who edited it, Anya, who did amazing layout, and others. As I said, the writing was not a kind of easy. It took me time to grasp the manuscript that Sebastian gave it to me. And it was a process of, in a way, updating some parts, not touching some parts, because I know, as I said, me and Giovanni were a bit different in the way we explore, and we both want to explore life and to explore the depth of how Chinese medicine understands life and understands disease. So it's first of all about going deep into this amazing body of knowledge, which is Chinese medicine. To me, the best medicine which is available for its ability to encompass everything from beginning of life to the universe and to health and disease. And this is the uniqueness of the system. And in when we touch cancer, we're really going to this very first beginning of life, because cancer is all about forming life and how they are forming the right way or in a way that creates a disease. To understand it from a Western point, from a Chinese point of view, it's a challenge. And that's why the book was a challenge, because it's all the time trying to take the knowledge that we have and analyze cancer, analyze the ancient prescriptions and adapting them to the current way cancer is perceived, to the current medications that people are taking, and others. Later, after we'll have amazing, I think, speakers and close friends of Giovanni commemorating him, I will give a short lecture, half an hour lecture about the diagnosis and take some parts of the books, which I think will explore this kind of how we are stretching our Chinese medicine knowledge to understand better cancer, to diagnose better the patients, and to help really reduce suffering and help people to cope better and survive cancer. So this is a little bit about the book. I must say a few words about my personal encounter. I first met Giovanni in the mid-'80s as a teacher, and as I said, from the first moment was a wow teacher. Was definitely one of my mentors through all my career. Later, I was lucky to be his patient. I thought this is the best way to learn, and then even assist him in his clinic. In the same times, in a very strange way, I became his classmate because this was the first time that Ted Kapchuk arrived to Europe to teach herbal medicine. I think Peter later will explain a little bit about the history. So this was the first time we had a class of herbal medicine, Chinese herbal medicine in Europe. So Ted Kapchuk was the teacher, and I was sitting next to Giovanni. Obviously, I was I felt like this small student. But I must say, Giovanni exceeded everybody. His ability to grasp, to explain. Ted was all over the place. Giovanni will focus him, ask him the correct questions, put everything in order. It was, definitely a man of a different magnitude than I met or meet. And a lot of people know of his writing. And as I say, I was like, had the real luck to follow him. Later, as a colleague, a close colleague, he came to visit me in Israel. He was teaching here. I met him many times in England. Have a lot of small stories, personal stories. Some I've shared with Sebastian, who was like, when I met Sebastian, also my heart went out because they have the same smile. Sebastian and Giovanni, and it's like a very specific smile that when I see it, it's like my heart immediately moves. So as I said, Giovanni kind of was always along my path and was crossing it every time. So it was a very unusual mix. Now I'll speak a little bit about people know Chinese medicine of being very serious, being metal, being able to go to the depth and the core, let's say like water, of understanding things. But on the other hand, he has this surprising fire. He was like a very warm person. Once you got the chance to meet this warmth, it was always almost unexpected and was very genuine and very total. So you had to come closer to Giovanni or give a space. And then I think this ability to meet this warmth is something that to me, and I believe everybody else who met, are thankful for him for life. So I'll just kind of say Giovanni for me was in so many aspects, influenced my career, inspired me. I think it follows me in all my teaching, uh, and in so many other ways. So it's an honor, obviously, to co-write a book with him, and there's I think this meeting. That's why I said at the beginning, it's very special, personal for me. And I would like to pass the stage to Sebastian uh, to say a few words, and then we'll have the following speakers, and then I'll give a short lecture. So thank you again, Sebastian, personally, everybody for joining, and for all the speakers.
Thank you, Yair, and hi everyone. It's Sebastian Maciocia here, and I'm joined by my gorgeous wife, Daisy. You might have seen our two daughters poke their heads into the screen a moment ago. We're joining you from Horsham in the UK, which for those of you outside is about 30 or 40 miles south of London. It's me who should be doing all the thanking. Firstly to Yair and the guy and the team at TCM Academy to help bring this project to life. It was always my belief that Giovanni's material is better to be published and see the light of day where it can be used and be helpful to the TCM community globally than stay on his hard drive. So thank you very much, Yair, for all the work and effort you've put into getting us to this point and be able to publish this book. It's it's fantastic effort on your part, and thank you to everyone who's joined and taken the time out of their Sunday evening to be here. We're getting close to 200 participants, it seems. You're from all over the world. I can see that some of you are from Germany, so my wife is from Munich. And we will be in San Diego for the PCOM conference. So for those of you near there or going to there, maybe I'll have a chance to see you in person there. Look, I mean, this evening was more for his peers and you to share stories, so I don't want to take up too much stage time. It was really just to say thank you very much. It's very touching to see the impact my father had on you all, and to see it's very fulfilling to see that his work continues to be helpful and recognized. For those of you joining us all around the world, I've just want to say that I have taken on to the extent I can the mantle to continue his legacy. So his herbal formulas, I think, represent a very interesting way how he developed and fine-tuned the classical patents, and I oversee the continuation of his herbal formulas via suwenherbs.com, and his online continuing education course is still available via maciociaonline.com, as well as his books. Peter Velasquez will be speaking momentarily, actually, and Jason. They both helped oversee the update of the practice of Chinese medicine to a third edition, for which I'm very grateful for. So look, I just wanted to say that's what I wanted to say, and it's really moving to see you all here, and thank you very much, and yeah, thank you for the kind words.
Well, thank you, Sebastian, and the family. Good to see you all. And I think Jason, you will be the first one. So I'm not really doing the introduction, everything. Just say maybe the beginning, just a few words about yourself, so that people will have a little bit of a background, and then the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, my name is Jason Smith. I have a practice in Madrid, Spain, and I have a Chinese medicine school. And first of all, I would like to say that I feel really, really honored to be here, and I'm overwhelmed. There's almost we have 200 people here online for the presentation of the book, and to give a tribute to Giovanni. So first off, I would like to say a huge thank you to the people at TCM Academy, a guy who did a great job organizing this. Yair, your intro was very, very touching, and I thank you for continuing Giovanni's work. Also, the team at Suen, Sebastian and Charlie, you're doing a great job. So keep on with your father's legacy, and my colleagues who are here, Peter and Rebecca, and of course, always I would be indebted for this life and the following 100 lives to Giovanni. He was the kindest human being and practitioner which I have met. I learned so much from him. I met him in 2010, and we had a very close relationship. He came to Spain, organized his seminars in Spain. I went to visit him in Santa Barbara twice, and we were all the time corresponding. I was asking him clinical queries all the time, and he always had the patience. He forwarded one of my, well, the only acupuncture point book which I wrote. He wrote a forward. So I am forever in debt with Giovanni, and I would like to share some personal stories I had with Giovanni. I have plenty of them, but I would like to share first how I met Giovanni. I met him in 2010, and Giovanni had he was starting a blog, and actually he said that if he was starting to do Chinese medicine, he would start a blog and talk about politics and everything, because he said he was a anarchist Taoist. So we had many talks on politics. But I saw he had a blog in English, and he was giving clinical queries and talking about his remedies, and it was not available in Spanish. So I just sent him an email. I didn't even think he was going to answer, just letting him know, look, I'm a practitioner from Spain. I really admire your work. Your book Foundations has helped me to set everything clear in the mess I had with Chinese medicine. And I said, I would like to translate your blog into Spanish. And he immediately replied, and he said, yes, of course. I never thought he was going to reply. And he said, and I need to pay you for this. How much would you charge for this? So I said, well, here's the great Giovanni, the great human being. And he ended up paying for my work. And then from there on, we developed a personal relationship. And I would like to share to you, which not many people know, is how Giovanni got to teach Chinese medicine. It was totally by accident, because first he started as a patient. He went to Peter Deadman's store in London in the 70s, and he was all the time asking questions about TCM. And then they said, well, why don't you go as a patient? And then it worked very well on him. And then he kept on asking, because Giovanni was, as you said, Yair, he was very, very curious in nature. And so he kept asking like all those questions to the people who used to work at Wholesale Foods. And he was asking all these questions all the time, until someone said, well, Giovanni, listen, why don't you study Chinese medicine? And so he enrolled. It was a 2-year course. It was, I believe, by Dr. Van Buren. And so it was a 2-year course. And when he finished the first year, the second year was going to start. And actually, they had no one to keep on teaching the first year. So Giovanni was so good, and he used to communicate so good, that actually they asked him, well, Giovanni, would you like to join the staff and start teaching Chinese medicine? And so that's how he ended teaching Chinese medicine, totally by accident. That was one of the first milestones, I believe, in Giovanni's career. And the second one was for him learning to read Chinese, because he was very, very fluent and very good at reading Chinese. And I asked him, Giovanni, why did you start reading Chinese? And he said, well, this happened after my first visit to China. Said, I was in China. I organized a trip. They were in Nanjing, where he was a visiting honorary professor. And he said, and I realized that for every 5 minutes that the Chinese teacher was speaking, the translator only said one word, liver cheese stagnation, or so he said, something is lost in the translation. And Giovanni, being as curious and as intelligent and bright as he was, he decided to learn Chinese on his own. And the way he did it, he just, and he mentioned you, Sebastian, and he said Sebastian was a baby. And so I used to take him at night in the car with me, because Giovanni bought like a Chinese language method, which he played in the car every night. And that's how he learned. all the Chinese words. And then he kept flashcards. So Giovanni, when I went to see him in Santa Barbara, he gave me a lot of boxes. He had all these boxes with these Chinese flashcards. And so patiently, he would go, he would have the Chinese word and on the reverse, the meaning. And he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of flashcards. And that's how we learned Chinese. So pretty brilliant. And that, I think that was a great milestone for Giovanni, because he took like everything that was in the classics, everything that was published in China, and he just made it easy to understand. And actually, I have some of his case histories here. I don't know if you can see here. And actually, the point, he was very methodical. The point prescription, which he used to write for his patients, they were written in Chinese. I see here he has, instead of writing stomach 36, he has here, I don't know if you can see it, Zhu San Li in Chinese written. So he was all the time practicing and writing Chinese. He was very faithful to the roots. And always something I'd liked very much about his books was that when he spoke about his experience, because he was not always, even though he wrote about the foundations of Chinese medicine, he was not always 100% sure that things that were in the classic worked. That he said, I write about foundations, so I need to tell that. But then in his books, you always find, in my experience, in my opinion. And also, he shared with me that his favorite book was The Channels of Acupuncture. That was the book he was most fond of. So that's what I have many, many stories to share with Giovanni, but I really find it interesting how he learned Chinese. I mean, I would find it impossible just going with a baby in a car and listening to a tape and learning Chinese. And I need, what I would like to say to end my short presentation was how humble Giovanni was. Something that always amazed me. Every morning he checked, he used to get about 20, 30 clinical queries from practitioners all over the world who didn't even know him. And he used to take time and he replied one by one. And that was, he was a true master. And I think he was one of the people who did the most for Chinese medicine in the West. So that's my small tribute to Giovanni, and I'm very happy that his legacy is kept on and is taken good care of. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason, for sharing. And I think also one of the unique things in the sharing is feeling the heart of Giovanni. You know, we all know him as a scholar. But I think, you know, people who share here, he touched their heart in a very deep way. I think thousands and thousands of people, he touched their mind, their ability, their depth of knowledge. But above all, I think, thank you for sharing, Jason. Peter Velasquez, the stage is yours. Again, please say a few words about yourself and just take it from there.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. I was very, very close to Giovanni over the years. And what I thought I'd like to do today was to focus on Giovanni's contribution to the development of TCM in Europe and America from a historical perspective. And then also talk a little bit about my personal relationship with him, as did Jason. I'll be reading from my notes in order for me to stay within my time limit. Otherwise, I could go on forever. And from time to time, I'll add some commentaries. So I consider Giovanni one of the pillars of the transmission and development of TCM in the US and Europe. I would also include Ted Kapchik and Dan Bensky. And then also my teacher in America, Dr. So, who started the first acupuncture school in America, the New England School of Acupuncture. Ted, if you know Ted and Dan Bensky studied together in Macau. And and these transmissions and teachings began around the mid-1970s. So that's where really a lot of information from China was coming to Europe and the States. And a bit about Giovanni's history. He was born February 28th, 1945 in Naples, Italy. He loves pizza. He was educated in Italy with a degree in economics and worked a short time for Fiat I believe, in England. And he declined to join his father's construction business. Instead, followed his passion and studied at the ICOM, the International College of Oriental Medicine in Sussex, England. And Jason has told you the story about meeting Peter Deadman and then beginning to study. Now, this is interesting. Dr. Van Buren was an osteopath, a Dutch osteopath, and he was very good. And he practiced 5-element style, but also he was friends with Dr. Worsley of the Traditional Acupuncture Institute. And so they both studied a bit with Wu Wei Ping, a very, very short time in Hong Kong, and I think they both studied in Korea. The interesting thing was they both practiced 5-element, and they were both very different in their approaches, very, very different. And it was not that which was practiced in China. So Giovanni studied. He was, as Jason mentioned, he was invited to teach, but not only that, he was invited to work in Van Buren's clinic before he graduated. I mean, that doesn't usually happen. He very quickly developed a full-time practice, and then when he graduated, even before he graduated, he taught at the school. At that time, there was a scarcity of accurate TCM information in English in the West, and we had to rely on Felix Mann, Acupuncture and How It Works Scientifically. That was written in 1962. And then the Theoretical Foundations of Chinese Medicine by Manfred Porkett. That was also written in English. That was 1974. But his English was so obscure that nobody could understand it. And we referred to it as writing in Portuguese. And then at that time, China was beginning to develop programs for foreign students. Giovanni was interested in this. He attended the 3-month programs in acupuncture and herbal medicine in 1980, in 1982. And that's the one I went with. That was the first advanced or further study program in Nanjing. He did that, so 1980, 82, and 87. And this is at the Nanjing College of TCM, now the Nanjing University of TCM. Also, he studied with Ted Kapchik in England. And this is while Ted was eloquently and entertainingly lecturing around the world, teaching. And yeah, you were on one side of Giovanni. I might have been on the other side. But in any case, he also he studied with Dr. John Shen in Brookline, Mass. And Dr. Shen was a master of diagnosis, particularly pulse diagnosis. And that's why I think that Giovanni developed lots of his skills. Dr. Shen was amazing in the way he could take the pulse and analyze the person's condition and past and possible future. So with his high level of training and Chinese language skills, he began the second phase of his professional career, which was, in addition to teaching, lecturing all over Europe and occasionally in the US, and writing his books. And so here are the books. The Tongue Diagnosis in Chinese Medicine, 1987. Foundations of Chinese Medicine, 1989. The Practice of Chinese Medicine, 1994. Obstetrics and Gynecology in Chinese Medicine, 1996. Diagnosis in Chinese Medicine, 2004. The Channels of Acupuncture, 2006. And The Psyche in Chinese Medicine, 2009. That's a lot of writing, right? And Yair, you mentioned how difficult it was for you to write the books. Can you imagine writing all these and at the same time teaching and running a clinical practice full time? So that was amazing. And also, just to be complete, Ted had published The Web That Has No Weaver in 1983, and I think that was one of the first books, and Giovanni built on that. And then Dan Bensky, he was an osteopath who studied with Ted in Macau, and he had written Acupuncture, a Comprehensive Text in 1981, and that was a translation of the Shanghai acupuncture text. And then he moved on to herbal medicine and wrote the Materia Medica in 1986 with Andy Gamble and Ted Kapchik, and then moved on to Formulas and Strategies, and he wrote that with Randy Bowerley in 1990. And I also wanted to mention that when Giovanni and I talked about his writing and how busy he was and how difficult it was, he said on a couple of occasions how much he was moved by Sebastian coming into his study and bringing his toys and sitting very quietly and playing with his toys as Giovanni was writing. And so they kept each other company, and they both worked and played together. After so many years, Sebastian, you're still with him. That's fantastic, and we all thank you for that. The other thing is, I want to mention a little bit about his books. As a teacher of TCM theory, I used to recommend The Tongue Diagnosis, The Foundations, The Practice in Obstetrics and Gynecology. Those were very thorough books and complete books, and the students didn't buy, and we weren't, probably most of the time, did not have the other three books, the last three that I mentioned. And that's because they had so much to handle just with the first four books. But I want to mention that the diagnosis in Chinese medicine is very, very complete and very, very useful for practitioners. The Channels of Acupuncture, which Jason mentioned, that's Giovanni's favorite book. It's one of my favorite books too. He really knew what he was doing. He knew the channels. He had great ideas. And if you love acupuncture, I would recommend having that book and reading that book. It's probably the most comprehensive book on the channels that I've seen. And also, he was a big fan of the extraordinary meridians, as am I. And there's a lot of information on that. And then finally, the Psyche in Chinese medicine. I'm sure most of us, or at least a good portion of us, deal with patients who have mental emotional issues. And his book on the psyche is very, very, very good, and I would recommend having that. And as you know, several of his books have become primary textbooks for most acupuncture colleges in the world. And toward the end of this phase, he established his herbal company, Suwen Herbs, developing formulas based on historical antecedents from the classic and modifying slightly to fit the commonly seen patterns and pathologies of our modern Western patients. And all this, once again, while lecturing, maintaining a busy clinical practice, and going around the world. I don't know how he did this. But he did one very, very, very clever thing, which I thought was remarkable. Rather than go back to Nanjing to study more herbs, he invited his favorite herbal teacher, who was very renowned, to come to London and live with him. And invited him to work with him in his clinical practice. So then Giovanni was with his teacher, who was very, very good, working with Western patients. And I'm sure that Giovanni learned so much from that experience that he could adapt the classical formulas to the Western patients. I think it helped him a lot with the Suwen herbs. And in 1996, he was appointed visiting professor of the Nanjing University of TCM and has been described by the Nanjing University as the father of Chinese medicine in Europe. That's a big honor. That's a big, big deal. And I really appreciate Nanjing giving him that honor because it was so richly deserved. So the next phase for Giovanni was leaving cloudy, damp England. As those of you who live there know what that's like. I lived there for a couple of years. And he moved to Santa Barbara, which is completely different from England, and purchased a house in a small village on the Amalfi Coast in Italy. So to me, he was looking for more sunshine, had enough of the English weather, and let's get some sunshine. He was also developing CEU courses, which I think probably many of you have taken. They're very, very good. They're very concise. You can learn a lot from taking them. And he also taught at PCOM at the Pacific College, both in the clinic and giving lectures. And at that time, he also was diving back into the classics, gaining new perspectives given all his experiences. And it's unfortunate that we didn't get to see his written ideas in another book. That's really too bad because I'm sure there would have been some great ideas. And I can give you one that we had talked about, the fact that when we learn to needle patients, we're always trying to obtain the dirt chi, which is numbness, soreness, and distension. But he was convinced that the mind of the practitioner and the intention of the practitioner was equally important, So in your mind, you can think what you want to do and follow that, and you can feel the chi and direct the chi as the practitioner. Now, I think this has very important implications on your clinical results, right? If you try doing that, and in addition to research, because now the clinician or the practitioner makes a difference in the results. And I hope Ted thinks about that, because Ted is now working for Harvard Medical School and doing a lot of research on placebo. And this is one area that would be very, very interesting for him to follow. So personally, I first met Giovanni in 1977. I had graduated from NISA. It was only a one-year school at that time. I was working as an engineer for 9 years. And I read about the acupuncture school beginning in Boston, and something hit me in the chest. I got a calling. So I studied for a year at night, and then worked during the day. At the end of the year, I decided, well, this is what I want to be doing. But I need more training. 1 year is not enough. So I applied to ICOM, and I was hoping to test out of the first year since I've already had a year of training. So they said, yes, if you pass some exams. So I went there, and Giovanni administered a point location exam to me. So I had to physically locate 20 points on a live body who happened to have a spine like a broomstick, and locate the points, give the anatomical description of the location, and give the TCM energetics and the indications for the points. 20 points all in 30 minutes. That was Giovanni. I ended up passing, thankfully. And then I went on to study, and Giovanni became my teacher, my acupuncturist, my herbalist, my group traveling companion to Nanjing in 1982, and my friend. Our families enjoyed spending time together, both in California and at my home in Newburyport. And Giovanni was obsessed with, for some reason, for going to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. So he ended up going there 1 year with his family, including Sebastian and Sebastian's friend George. And then they came up to Newburyport and stayed with us for a few days. And the boys, Sebastian and George, were hysterically funny. They were so funny to see the whole family dynamic and the interactions. Could have been great, great fodder for a sitcom. And then we often talked. I used to visit him almost yearly in Santa Barbara, probably maybe 10 consecutive years or so. And we talked very often on the phone too, sometimes at least 3 times a week. And the talks would include TCM theory, our patients, pathology, treatments, and we both like to talk about integrative medicine, how what we do fits in a Western culture. And also, I continually got updates on Sebastian's life, and we talked about the trials and tribulations of our personal lives, which I'll leave that alone. Okay, so as a friend and a colleague, there are a few stories and observations I'd like to share. His diagnostic ability, his point location, tongue diagnosis, pulse diagnosis were superb. He was very, very sharp and clear, as Yair and Jason both have mentioned. And not only that, he had a keen intuitive sense of the patient's conditions and needs. He's very, very intuitive, both mind and heart. And he treated his patients with lots of compassion. And he was equally skilled as an acupuncturist and herbalist, which I think is very rare. And we've had talks, and he's written in some of his books that the thinking out there for the TCM practitioners is that herbal medicine is stronger and more effective than acupuncture. And he disagreed with that. He said they're both equally as powerful, but they're different. And I tend to agree with that. My passion is more in acupuncture than it is in herbal medicine. But for most of my patients, I use acupuncture. Then when necessary, I use herbal medicine, but I use Giovanni's formulas, which I think are very, very good and very appropriate. So he was very clear and thorough also in his lectures. I mean, he was held in so high regard whenever he came around the States. And he came to NISA a couple of times and lectured. And people were so impressed with his clarity, his knowledge, his thoughtfulness, and the amount of time and effort that he put into his talking. He was able to lecture 6 hours a day for 2 days, which I don't understand how he could do that, but he used to pump himself up with coffee in the morning, and that's how he got through it. And that was caffeinated, by the way. And there were a couple of situations in Nanjing that I was very touched by. One was that when Ted knew that Giovanni and I were going to be going together to Nanjing, and we're stopping off in Hong Kong, he asked us to deliver a little package and a gift for who he called his Chinese godmother in Macau. So Giovanni and I took a fast boat, a high-speed boat. We went there and we met her and we saw the school and gave her gift. That was very touching for us. And then he had a very, very close relationship with his clinical professor, Dr. Shu Shin-ming. And it seemed like an ideal father-son relationship. And they had palpable mutual admiration and respect for each other. It was so nice to see. And they continued to have contact over the years. And then there's one story I'll never forget. At the completion of the Nanjing course in '82, all the Western students were required to write and verbally present a final paper. As these papers were presented, translators would translate into Chinese for the benefit of the Chinese professors. Giovanni, on the other hand, presented the paper in Chinese, with the translator translating into English for this benefit of the students.
Amazing.
And,
Well, I'll just we'll ask you to wrap just that we can have to run on schedule, but I love all your sharing. So
okay, can I say one more thing that people will enjoy? While in Santa Barbara, he developed a passion for salsa dancing. He approached the dancing with the same fervor and passion as he had with TCM. He said that if he weren't into TCM, he would be a dancer, a salsa dancer. I watched him dancing on my visits to Santa Barbara, and I strongly advised him to stick with TCM. So, in closing, I'm very grateful for his friendship and for all he's done for us, and for those of us that share his love and passion for Chinese medicine. He's a very gifted and special person. I miss him very much. Thank you,
Peter. Thank you so much. And without further ado, I will pass to Rebecca.
Thank you, Yair. I'm so honored to be here to remember Giovanni. And thank you to Guy and to Yair and to Sebastian for all the enormous hard work that I know you do to carry on his enormous legacy. And I was thinking, as I was listening to everybody talking, that I think Giovanni would have been shocked and surprised that this was happening, because for someone who achieved so much, he was incredibly modest and humble. And I think he would sort of truly not really believe that we're here and wanting to celebrate him and talk about him. I had the very good fortune and honor to help Giovanni when he was writing his diagnosis book, which Peter mentioned, between 1999 and 2004. So I got to witness firsthand his process of writing a book. And I was looking back through that book today and remembering that it's over 1,000 pages, and remembering that that's just one of his many books, several of which are a lot more than 1,000 pages. And I think it's really hard for people perhaps to imagine what that process is like. Firstly, I think it's quite a lonely process writing these big books. Secondly, just the practical reality of managing the references and the index and remembering what you said in chapter 3 by the time you're on chapter 113 is really quite phenomenal. And everyone who's spoken so far have alluded to Giovanni's many qualities. I think it would be impossible if we were asked to just sort of say 3 words to describe what his greatest skills were. I think that I got it down to about 7 or 8, and that was difficult. But we know that Giovanni was a very talented clinician. He had a very busy practice. His patients had enormous faith and trust in him, and he cared about them deeply. And I remember several occasions where he would talk about a particular patient that he was concerned about and thinking about. So despite everything else he was doing, he managed to hold individual patients in his mind in that way. And as Peter mentioned, he was equally skilled as a herbalist as he was as an acupuncturist, and I think that's incredibly rare. He was a scholar, and I think also it's worth just mentioning really that to come from Naples in the he was born in the 1940s, but to leave Naples in the 60s, I think was in itself an extraordinary thing. And I know that Giovanni said that it was not something that his family at the time necessarily understood or supported. So to come from southern Italy at that time in history and to become this kind of pioneering scholar of Chinese medicine is really quite extraordinary. As we know, he was an author, and as has been mentioned, he was an extraordinary teacher. And I think it's very unusual for someone of his intellect to be able to teach in the way that he did. I think very often the two don't go hand in hand, but he was able to share and make his vast knowledge accessible to practitioners who didn't necessarily always share his kind of level of scholarship. And of course, he was a sinologist as well. And as you've both mentioned, he taught himself Chinese and before that, English, of course. And, you know, most of us, if we're really sort of lucky in our lives, will do one of those things that he did all of incredibly well. But even more importantly, I think he was an exceptionally kind, gentle human being. He was a very he took his role as your father, Sebastian, incredibly. That was his most important role in his life. And I think it's really hard for new practitioners or students today to really understand what the TCM world was like when Giovanni started to write his books. Now, of course, there are a huge plethora of books in English on all sorts of subjects. But of course, when Giovanni started writing his, as you mentioned, Peter, there was really just Felix Mann and the Porkert book. So most of what has come since, I feel really Giovanni and his work and his books were a springboard for everything that's happened in the decades since then. So it just feels very apt and important that we're remembering that and acknowledging that today. And I think the last thing I wanted to say really was not only did Giovanni have an enormous thirst and curiosity for knowledge of Chinese medicine, but he generally did for so many subjects and in life. He was incredibly interested in psychology and psychoanalysis and philosophy and Western medicine as well. And I think that's probably the overriding memory that I hold of him, his enormous thirst and curiosity for knowledge and his phenomenal ability to share his knowledge with others. So yeah, it's really lovely to be here remembering him with you all.
Rebecca, thank you so much. I think each one of us are showing a different aspect of Giovanni. And I believe after we'll end this evening, we'll all feel that we haven't shared enough. As they say, he was a giant. There's no other words for me to describe. And I met many people in many fields. Last one will be Umberto. I actually interviewed him because he's not able to be online this evening.
And first of all, please let me thank you very much for inviting me. And let me say hello to Sebastian Maciocia too, and the colleagues, teachers at the TCM Academy. And hello also to everyone connected to this important book launch event on your and Giovanni Maciocia's work. And of course, I apologize for only being able to attend virtually and not in person. But really, I can't be in person for this event. We're talking about my knowledge and friendship with Giovanni, and I can say me and my colleague and co-founder of the Association of Medical Acupuncturists in Bologna, Carlo Maria Giovanardi. We met Giovanni in the early 1990s by reading his fundamental book, The Foundation of Chinese Medicine. And of course, we appreciated very much his typical Anglo-Saxon teaching approach. And so we were so enthused that we felt the need to contact and compliment him, and also introduce ourselves and our acupuncture school to him. At the point, we asked him if we could have the chance to observe him working in his private clinic in the UK, and we also invited him to give lectures at our school. Being the kind and generous person he was, he gladly accepted, and thus began his teaching collaboration with our school, as well as a friendship that would last for 2 decades until he passed.
And I know you were not just close to him by the TCM, but also by the heart. I remember you meeting him, and there was a lot of special personal contact with him.
Yes. We were really a good friend, and I used to talk by phone with him. I think we can say every week, simply to chat, talking about football, because Giovanni was a fan of Italy team and Naples team. And of course, in this occasion, I have the chance to ask for his advice and share my professional experiences in applying his teachings. And so my professional skills are improved every time. And so I was very lucky to have this kind of connection and friendship with him.
Did you speak Italian or English?
Italian, yes, of course. We speak Italian. So
we all know him almost as an English person. How was his Italian?
No, the Italian was very good, and his English speaking is very good for us Italian.
And do you miss him?
Of course, because first of all, the friendship, and as I told you, 1 week call with him was in 20 years. It were a lot of time. We discussed really of many things, also of policy, Italian policy, world policy, apart of football and acupuncture. And so sometimes I think to call him, because I need I need his advice for my professional skill, and as now, of course, it's impossible.
What was his influence on the Italian TCM? I know you have a big school and maybe many people attended these classes. What was his influence on the Italian acupuncture level and teaching?
And I think that not just for Italian students, but for all the Western students, because his profound knowledge of Chinese language, I mean, allowing him the direct access to the original text and his great ability to synthesize complex concepts and also write very clear, in my opinion, made him I can say the greatest disseminator of Chinese medicine in the Western country, and not only in acupuncture but also in Chinese health. So I think I can say also that it was the first that transmitted the true way of teach and share the Chinese medicine when China opened 40 years ago, because before we studied acupuncture, passing through French teachers, in particular Vietnamese teachers. So it was not really the Chinese acupuncture, but was a little mixed change. Yes. Yes.
I totally agree. I think Giovanni was the one that produced the best books to help everyone to understand and gain the foundation of Chinese medicine.
Yes.
Can you share any special story?
Giovanni was a sort of chef. He enjoyed very much to cook his food. Yes.
In the Italian style?
Of course. Yeah. What kind of question do you do to me?
The best food I had in Bologna. So yeah, I know you're also a great host and know about food yourself. So any last words to say goodbye or something to Sebastian, to the family, and for the passing away of Giovanni?
Sebastian, know that I have very grateful to Giovanni for because I had this privilege to share a part of my life and of course a great part of my professional journey with him, and he helped me very much to become the acupuncture I am now. Yes, I can say so. Yes, and I'm sure that if I can say so, because I know you are a very expert of oncology and psychology. I met and I had you many times to talk about these topics, and Giovanni too was a big expert of oncology and psychology. So this book in which you wrote your experience on oncology and take some manuscript from Giovanni. I'm sure that this book with your two experiences, it's a very important and useful book, I'm sure, of this.
Well, thank you, Umberto, for this talk and time. And I must say that, both of us were very lucky to have Giovanni as a friend also in our lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you to you once more, and I hope and wish you all of you a pleasant and useful event.
I think it was wonderful to hear Umberto, who was a true friend and a great person, by the way, and a teacher himself. So we are ending this part of this event and meeting. Sebastian, do you want to say a last word before we move to a lecture?
No, I won't keep you any longer. Thank you very much. It's been really touching to hear all your stories. So thank you, Peter, Rebecca, Jason, and Umberto. It's really, really touching. Thank you. I'll let you crack on, but stay well, everyone. And I'll write my email in the chat. So if anyone wants to contact me, you can. But thank you. Stay well, and goodbye from London.
So thank you, as everybody's saying, Sebastian, to keep his legacy and just to be here with us and sharing. So now we are to the revealing of the book. As I said, it was a journey, a very special journey to me personally. Sebastian and me, we met 3 years almost, or 2 years ago. First, we emailed and we had the manuscript, and then we met again when the book was finished. And this is a photo of our meeting. And again, there's no words to say. When I was writing the book, I could see Giovanni from every page. And I think it was a very, to me, a special process to take this. Was extensive notes. They were lacking some details, references, and others, but still, it was a good backbone for the book and for the depth of the book. This is the chapters that we are mentioning in the book, started from the history. This is a pure Giovanni's chapter. He was very interested in the wording. Obviously, in ancient China, the word cancer was not as we understand now. Today, we understand cancer as on a molecular level, on a cell level, was not within the Chinese understanding of cancer, but there is a lot of references to how you name it. Then it goes to the etiology and pathology in cancer and the patterns. I'll discuss few in a short lecture, and the diagnostic elements of cancer. Then there's the general approach to cancer in Chinese medicine, giving like the overview, and the big chapter about the integration of the Western treatment, and especially radiotherapy side effects, and then chemotherapy side effects. Because when we treat cancer patient, we don't just see the patient. We have the Western knowledge and the extensive details about the patient's condition, but also these patients are exposed to Western medical treatments, and they alter very much what we see in the clinic and their health, not just during the treatment, but also in the recovery stage and later. We have a chapter about the anti-cancer properties in some herbs, which shows some of the magnitude of research today. Many herbs are very promising also to be developed into pharmaceuticals. I still love to stay in the realms of Chinese medicine and not to move to the realms of pharmaceutical, which has a reductionist view, very different to what we believe and we practice, but we do integrate the holistic view with the reductionist view. And so we do mention the research, some active ingredients, then some nutrition and recipe, which is more like always in Chinese medicine, the difference between herbal medicine and food was linear. So you pass a passage when you use some herbs into food and some foods into medicine. So it's more like a chapter with a lot of things that you can do at home. And then there is an appendix about the modern formula, both from Suen and from my own clinical and research experience that we developed. In this lecture, I want to touch on like 4 different aspects of diagnosis, but also to give some clinical tips to it, or practical that you can apply. So we start with the diagnosis of Bien Bing and Bien Zem. And this is very much, I'm trying to follow Giovanni's also thought in it, and to show that the difference of when you diagnose cancer with Chinese medicine tools. I'll give a small example from the book about the treatment and the diagnosis of bleeding, which can be very common in many cancer cases. And I'll talk about the diagnosis of channels, especially in breast cancer, and the unique tongue diagnosis of breast cancer. What I always loved about Giovanni's work, he had a clear mind. He really presents Chinese medicine as a medicine. This is one of the hardest things to explain to the world. Chinese medicine is a pure medicine with all its system. It's not just a treatment method. It's not herbs. It's not acupuncture. It is first of most a very detailed and very precise way to diagnose disease. And there was no one that I know of, like Giovanni, who would always start from very clear differentiation. And Bien Bing always called the disease. It explored the territory of disease. And then what disease you have. So cancer in this respect, you will see it's a complex Bien Bing, because there was no clear definition for cancer. And there's like there's for wind cold or wind heat or wind disease. This is a good definition of Bien Bing, that you say wind disease. In the West, it will go later into flu or sinusitis or other problems. So you have already the category of wind, and then you go into the pattern differentiation, which is Bien Zeng. And this is when you go into the pattern differentiation, you understand how the disease developed. And as we know, when we approaching cancer, there is a lot of different options to the pattern differentiation. And the complexity of it is quite big, because we have the underlying condition, we have the condition, and sometimes the symptoms. Let's take, for example, the differentiation of bleeding in cancer. This is like from the book. So we know there's different patterns for bleeding. Bleeding can be from heat, from stasis, from toxic heat, from deficiency, like of spleen or a kidney. Each one of them will give different symptoms for the bleeding, and there will be different types of bleeding. And what I'm stating here, because I'm teaching extensively oncology acupuncture, and we have a course that by now we have more than 700 graduates from around the world who are studying with us in depth how to treat oncology patients. And one of the first things I'm saying, a lot of time practitioners, when they hear cancer, they have this black screen. They disassociate from all their knowledge, and they are a bit lost. We always have to come back to the roots. And I think Giovanni in his books, and also in the backbones of this book, helps us to go back always to the root of Chinese medicine to differentiate whatever we see. So also in bleeding, although there can be different causes in Western medicine, we will still look at the symptoms, we'll look at the tongue, we'll take the pulse, we'll differentiate the correct patterns if we can. For bleeding, relatively, it's easier. For other things, we sometimes have to stretch or to go to the basic. Is it excess or deficiency? And then we can differentiate. At least it's excess, so we treat it in one way, comparing to deficiency. And once we have a different pattern differentiation, we're starting with the basic formula. And the formula will help us to guide to the best herbs that we use over decades and the best combinations of herbs. Then obviously we can alter them according to the patient's condition. But these foundations are helpful now as they've been always. I want to give another example of diagnosis, like of the meridian system. When we diagnose the meridian system, for example, for breast cancer, and in many cases, the differentiation diagnosis of meridian system is important for, especially for acupuncture when we treat. And as we know, there's different channels that are passing the breast. I mean, the obvious one is the stomach channel, but also the liver has a pathway which goes through the breast and actually a certain connection to the nipple itself. There is the heart has an internal pathway. And if we look deeper, we can also find that the connection is also from the other chapters, including the lung channel, which passes in the breast, the internal channels, and they can all influence the chi and the movement of chi in the breast. And sometimes also in different locations of the breast. Obviously, if let's say there is a lump which is passing across a specific channel or internal channel, we take it into consideration both when we treat, but also when we diagnose. A lot of chi stagnation can happen due to and in relation to emotions. It doesn't mean that breast cancer in this case is starting from an emotional condition, but it can be related, and in few cases, it can be also the root of the disease. And if we look at the channel, we can obviously liver is in charge of the free flow of chi, and it passes through the breast and especially to the nipple. I just today had this question from an oncologist that have a patient that has, after surgery and everything, has this nipple pain that nothing can help it. And for us, it's obvious that we will treat it from the liver channel, actually. Can be from the stomach. In her case, all the indications were for the liver channel. And we know that anger, frustration, and guilt can hinder the chi and can affect the breast. And I must say, we live in an era where women are undergoing a lot of stress, much more than men. They have 3 jobs, whatever they do, and even that, we are in a better equality situation still. I think women's responsibility and extensive amount of care is creating a lot of frustration and guilt. And in cases, we hear it when we diagnose the patient, and also we hear it in their past history. Stomach and spleen are affected by worry, and all these channels also affected later, because women can have a breast cancer, she undergoing all the treatments, but the filling were not treated during the treatment of Western medicine. This is the place where Chinese medicine can help and balance. And when we identify a pattern, it is important also to treat it for prevention. The lung relates to sadness, and especially traumatic sadness can trigger different cancers, and as many specific traumas, again, not every trauma. And the heart is related to all the emotions, and especially if there is a deep trauma, it will always affect the heart. And all these channels are passing through the breast and can affect the breast. I just want to stress that it's not just important for the diagnosis, it's extremely important for prevention, because these patterns, as I say, Western medicine knows how to take the cancer out. Hopefully, if this is an early diagnosis, knows how to treat it very intensively with radiation later, with radiation or with other strong means. But the pattern themselves, the underlying patterns, are same. For every chi stagnation, especially in the chest, can affect the lung and the heart, and can impact the emotions, and also further affect the chest. I want to end the Chong Mai. Chong Mai is this extra meridian, is extremely important, especially in breast cancer, and the Chongmai channel also spreads to the chest. And to me, this is many times one of the root in diagnosis of breast cancer because it relates to hormonal changes, which are, as I say, we are in the Western world, we have a lot of exposure to strange substances which are either hormone or hormone-likes, even plastic. And women are taking pills and exposed to other hormones in excessive condition, and many other examples. And they affect mainly the Chongmai, and as I said, the Chongmai spread to the breast and the chest. This is an example of two acupuncture points which are meaningful also to prevent Qi stagnation in the breast. If we're talking more about the liver perspective, liver 14, which is also have a beautiful name. One of its name can be translated as a gate of hope. It's the last point on the channel system, very much related to the flow from liver 14, which is the last point on the liver channel, to lung 1. So has a deep influence also on the chest and breast and diaphragm. And spleen 21, that is also related to the great Luo system, all the small minute channels that also spread to the breast itself in women. And both points are important to treat the health of breast. I must say the book is totally focused on herbal medicine. It does touch on diagnosis and the rest. We're mentioning a few acupuncture points like this, but that's a mainly herbal book. Acupuncture book will probably follow. In tongue diagnosis, there is a chest area, and this area can be seen on the tongue, on both sides of the tongue. Obviously, we have to differentiate that what we see there is not related to the lung or to the heart, but it's more related to the breast. This is within our differential diagnosis. So we do have not immediately a sign there will be purely just related to the breast, but in many cases, and you can see it yourself when you see women with breast cancer, do have a close look at this area and try to see what you can pick up. It's changes in color, so obviously the more red will mean there is more heat pathology, the more purple, the more stagnation pathology, the more pale, maybe deficiency pathology of spleen, etc. We look at the shape, how swollen it is. If there is teeth mark, can relate more to the spleen. If there is spots, it more relates to local stagnation. And all this will be important, not just in the diagnosis of the breast cancer, but as I said, later in prevention, because the pattern can stay even when the cancer was removed. And from our point of view, prevention is always one of the keys where we can provide much more than you can imagine. I'm just now running a research showing in prevention of recurrence of specifically bladder cancer, and already proven it to a certain extent. So in tongue diagnosis, when we look at this chest area, we can see either the spots, which are more showing a local stagnation, or changes in the whole area, which shows the pathology of Qi in the body. They're all helping us within this. I must say, if you treat cancer patient, there's a lot of uncomfortable zones, but when you have all these building blocks, you will always find the clarity in the diagnosis and the clarity in the TCM approach to the condition. So this was just a kind of snippet from the book and from what we present there. And I want to finish up with saying Giovanni's legacy lives in the knowledge he shared and in the inspiration he sparked in others. And obviously, it includes all the speakers that spoke today, myself, and thousands of practitioners who I know he touched them and sparked this in them. I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank again, Sebastian and everybody who spoke, and commemorate Giovanni. And I wish you the best of health and healing. All the very best. So again, thank you all. We even managed to stay on time, which is always to me good, so people can plan their time accordingly. And I was very touched also, as I say, I teach a lot, I'm online a lot. This time for me personally, it was touching and special. And Giovanni obviously meant and means a lot to my life. So thank you all for joining, and all the very best to you.